She gave her lunch to a boy who had nothing. He gave her a promise that would cost him everything to keep. Elowen, 8 years old, watched the hungry boy through the playground fence every afternoon. Her family survived on prayers and paychecks that never stretched far enough, but she split her sandwich anyway, every single day for 2 years. No cameras recorded it, no adults applauded, just sand, silence, and God keeping score. When Bennett vanished into foster care, he left behind 5 words that would haunt him for a decade. "I'll marry you when I'm rich." Elowen laughed, but something about the way he said it stayed with her. Years passed. The Elowen grew up still giving, even when it hurt. Bennett grew up learning how to survive alone. Somewhere along the way, he began chasing those 5 words, not because they were smart, but because forgetting them felt like breaking something sacred. Tonight, exhausted and almost defeated, he will step toward a door he nearly walks past. Inside that room is a moment neither of them prepared for, and a question that has no safe answer. Was that childhood kindness wasted? Or was it written down somewhere he can't see? Stay with me, and if stories like this matter to you, subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever felt like kindness was wasted, like promises were just pretty lies children tell, this story will shatter that doubt. Because some vows aren't made to people, they're made to God, and God doesn't forget. To understand why this moment mattered, why a 30-second reunion would unravel both of them, we have to go back. Back to when they were children. Back to a playground where God was watching, and 2 kids were learning what love actually costs. 10 years earlier, Lincoln Park Elementary, a dusty playground where miracles wore worn-out shoes. Elowen arrived at the playground at 3:47 p.m. Same as always, her backpack held half a sandwich. Wrapped in yesterday's napkin, an apple with a bruise, and a juice box her mother had bought on sale. Bennett's usual spot, the bench near the rusted merry-go-round, sat empty. She waited. The afternoon stretched long. Other kids swung from monkey bars, screamed down slides, kicked balls that barely held air. Elowen sat on the bench, sandwich on her lap, watching the fence line. Maybe he was sick. Maybe his foster family took him somewhere after school. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow came. The bench stayed empty. She waited anyway. Unwrapped the sandwich, rewrapped it. The bread got soggy from her hands. By Friday, the sandwich was 3 days old. She threw it away and cried in the girls' bathroom during lunch. Nobody asked why. This is where most faith begins to crack. Not with thunder or earthquakes, just silence, just empty benches and unanswered questions whispered to a God who doesn't explain himself. 3 days before Elowen noticed Bennett's absence, a woman in a gray pantsuit knocked on the door of his foster home. Bennett was in the kitchen washing dishes, water too hot, soap burning the cut on his thumb. "Bennett Cole?" The woman's voice was professional. Tired. He'd heard that tone before. His foster mother, Mrs. Patterson, called him into the living room. 2 social workers stood by the door. One held a clipboard, the other a black trash bag. "Grab your things, sweetheart. We're moving you to a new placement." Bennett's stomach dropped. "Why? What did I do?" "Nothing, hun. Mrs. Patterson just can't continue care right now. Budget cuts. It's not personal." It always felt personal. He climbed the stairs to the room he'd shared with 2 other boys. His belongings fit in the trash bag with room to spare. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, underwear, socks with holes. The backpack Elowen had complimented once because it had a cartoon dog on it. He checked the front pocket. The note was still there. The one she'd written in crayon during art class when she thought he wasn't looking. "You don't have to be rich. You just have to remember." He held it for a long moment, then zipped it back inside. In the car, Bennett pressed his forehead against the window and watched the neighborhood disappear. The playground, the school, the only place that felt close to safe. God, did I do something wrong? No answer. Just highway noise and the social worker's radio playing soft rock like everything was fine. Aloan kept saving half her lunch for 2 weeks. She'd sit on the bench, sandwich in her lap, pretending he'd walk through the gate any second. He never did. Her mother noticed she was coming home hungrier. "Baby, you eating at school?" "Yes, Mama." Lie. But a small one. The kind you tell to protect people you love from worrying about things they can't fix. At night, Elowen prayed the way her grandmother taught her. Simple, direct. "God, please bring Bennett back. Or tell me he's okay. Or something. Please." The ceiling stayed silent. The apartment stayed cramped. Her father's hours got cut at the warehouse. Her mother picked up weekend shifts cleaning offices. Nobody talked about it, but dinner got smaller. Alowen stopped asking for seconds. She also stopped waiting at the playground. Not because she forgot, because remembering hurt too much. Bennett's new foster home was 40 minutes away. Different school, different rules, same loneliness. He kept the note in his backpack. Read it every morning before the bus came, every night before the lights went out. "I'll marry you when I'm rich." He didn't say it out loud anymore. Too embarrassing. But he thought it, repeated it like scripture, like a promise that could anchor him when everything else felt temporary. Faith doesn't always look holy. Sometimes it just looks stubborn. A 10-year-old boy refusing to let go of 5 words because they're the only thing that feels true. Bennett started staying after school, extra help in math, tutoring, anything to avoid the foster home. He worked odd jobs, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, bagging groceries, saved every dollar in a sock under his mattress. Not for toys, not for games, for someday. For the version of himself that could keep promises instead of breaking them. The years moved like water. Slow, then sudden. Alowen's family sank deeper. Eviction notices, utility shutoffs, her mother's hands shaking when she counted coins for bus fare. Her father's shoulders curving under weight no man should carry alone. Alowen learned to be small, quiet, didn't ask for new shoes even when her toes pressed against the front, didn't complain when dinner was cereal, didn't cry when her friends got birthday parties and she got a hug. She grew up fast, too fast, childhood stolen by necessity. Bennett bounced between 4 more foster homes before he aged out of the system at 18. Each home taught him something different: how to disappear, how to survive on little, how to work harder than everyone else because nobody was coming to save him. Some nights he'd pull out the note, now creased and faded, and wonder if Elowen even remembered him, if she'd moved away, if she'd laughed about the silly boy who promised her the world with empty pockets. But he kept going, studied, worked, saved, built himself into someone unrecognizable from the hungry kid at the playground. Both of them carried invisible wounds, the kind that don't bleed but never quite heal, the kind that make you strong and brittle at the same time. 10 years passed. Alowen turned 18, Bennett turned 20. She worked 2 jobs and sent money home. He worked 80-hour weeks and built a business from nothing. She still gave too much. He still remembered too hard. Neither one knew where the other was. Neither one stopped looking, even when they pretended they had. They survived, but in very different ways. And God, who'd been silent for a decade, was about to speak. Bennett Cole, at 20, looked nothing like the hollow-eyed boy from the playground. Taller, broader, hands calloused from loading docks and late-night warehouse shifts. But his eyes still carried that hunger. Just a different kind now. He worked for a logistics company during the day. 60-hour weeks minimum. Nights were for online business courses. weekends for the side hustle he'd built delivering packages for local businesses. Sleep came in 4-hour blocks. Coffee replaced meals more often than he'd admit. His apartment was a studio in a neighborhood most people avoided after dark. Bare walls, futon, desk covered in notebooks and spreadsheets. One window overlooked a parking lot where someone's car alarm went off every night at 2 a.m. He didn't mind. Comfort wasn't the goal. Freedom was. The kind that came from owing nothing to nobody. The promise lived in his wallet now. That crayon note, laminated at a FedEx store, corners still soft despite the protection. He'd pull it out during lunch breaks, read it while eating gas station sandwiches in his car. You don't have to be rich, you just have to remember. Rich? Not yet. Not even close. But disciplined. Faithful. Moving forward even when forward felt impossible. Faith tested, but alive. Barely. Some mornings he'd wake up and wonder if he was chasing a ghost. A memory. A girl who'd probably forgotten him the moment he disappeared. But then he'd remember her hands, how they shook when she tore that sandwich, how she smiled even though she was hungry too. And he'd get up, go to work, keep building. Alawan Marcus, at 18, looked tired in ways no teenager should. Her mother's eyes, her father's slumped shoulders, generations of exhaustion compressed into one young woman who still tried to smile. Her family's collapse happened, slowly, then all at once. Her father's hours cut, her mother's health failing, medical bills stacking like accusations. Eviction notice taped to the door the week before Eloan's high school graduation. She never walked across that stage. Dropped out 3 months early to work full-time at a grocery store. Cashier. Stocker. Whatever paid. Mornings she cleaned office buildings downtown. Afternoons she bagged groceries. Nights she came home to an apartment that felt smaller every day. Her paychecks went straight to her parents. Rent, utilities, medication. Nothing left for herself. She wore the same 3 outfits, rotated and rewashed until the fabric went thin. But here's the thing that breaks your heart. Kind hearts are often punished first. Alawan still gave. Still slipped $5 to the homeless man outside the grocery store. Still bought an extra sandwich to leave on the break room table for whoever needed it. Still volunteered at the church food pantry every Saturday morning, even though she could have used that time for a third job. Her mother would say, "Baby, you can't save everybody." Eloan would smile. "I know, Mama, but I can try." Some people are wired for sacrifice. It's not noble or tragic. It's just who they are. Alawan gave because not giving felt like suffocation. She never talked about the boy from the playground, never mentioned the promise. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet and her parents were asleep, she'd pull out an old shoebox from under her bed. Inside, a small notebook, pages filled with prayers written in careful handwriting. God, wherever Bennett is, please keep him safe. Please let him know somebody believed in him. Please don't let him think he was forgotten. 10 years of prayers. Some angry, some desperate, all honest. God felt silent, but she kept writing anyway. Mercy Table Community Kitchen smelled like bread and grace. Industrial ovens, long metal tables, volunteers in mismatched aprons moving with practiced efficiency. Saturday morning. Alawan stood behind the serving line, hair tied back, hands steady despite the tremor that never quite left. She'd been volunteering here for 2 years. Same station, same rhythm. Soup, bread, smile. Next. The people who came through weren't statistics. They were Mr. Raymond, who lost his job, Ms. Patricia, whose disability check didn't cover rent, families who worked full-time and still couldn't afford food. Eloan knew their names, their stories. She served each person like they mattered, because they did. The coordinator, Sister Marie, squeezed her shoulder. You're an angel, child. Elowen shook her head, just trying to help. The morning rush had just started when the door opened and Bennett Cole walked in. He didn't see her at first, too busy scanning the room, looking for whoever ran the volunteer orientation. He wore jeans and a plain hoodie, work boots that had seen better days. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed success, just a man trying to be useful. Alawan was ladling soup into a bowl when she heard his voice. "Excuse me, I'm here for the volunteer meeting." Her hands froze. The ladle slipped, clattered against the pot. Soup splashed. She didn't notice. That voice, deeper now, older, but the cadence, the slight hesitation, the politeness that felt almost apologetic. She looked up. Bennett stood 10 feet away, talking to Sister Marie, profile visible. Taller than she remembered, broader, stubble on his jaw, but the same, somehow exactly the same. Her breath caught, the room tilted, sound warped into static. Sister Marie pointed toward the serving line. "Elowen can show you around. She's our veteran volunteer." Bennett turned. Their eyes met. The world stopped. Not metaphorically, literally. Everything froze. The noise, the movement, the decade between them. Bennett's face went pale. His lips parted. No words came. Elowen's hands started shaking so hard she had to grip the counter. Tears came without permission, hot and fast, blurring her vision. Bennett crossed the space between them in 4 steps. Stopped just short of touching her. His voice came out broken. "You still give everything away." That's what destroyed her. Not hi or remember me or any normal greeting. Just the truth. The simplest, most devastating truth. Elowen's voice cracked. "Bennett?" He nodded. Tears on his face now, too. "It's me." Silence. Shock. 10 years collapsing into 30 seconds. Sister Marie backed away quietly, giving them space. Alawan wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I didn't know if I looked for you." Bennett's voice was urgent now, raw. 3 years. I've been looking everywhere. I've been here, the whole time, right here. I know. I'm sorry. I should have come back sooner. He stopped, swallowed hard. "I wanted to keep my promise first." Alawan's face crumpled. "What promise?" "The one I made at the playground." Her breath hitched. "Bennett, we were kids. You don't have to—" "I'm not rich." The words came out fast, defensive, like he needed her to understand. "I work 2 jobs. I live in a studio with roaches. I drive a car with 200,000 miles. I don't care." Alawan's voice was fierce through the tears. "I never cared about that." "But I promised. You were 10 years old and starving. I didn't give you food for a transaction. I gave it because you were hungry and I had something to share." Bennett looked at her like she'd just rewritten his entire theology. "Then why did you write that note? The one about remembering?" "Because I didn't want you to forget that somebody saw you, that you mattered, not because of what you'd become, because of who you already were." Silence. Heavy. Sacred. Bennett's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm still walking toward it. The promise. I'm not there yet, but I'm still—" Alawan reached across the counter, took his hand, hers still shaking, his steady now. "Then I'll walk too." The next 3 years tested them in ways the playground never prepared them for. Bennett's logistics side hustle didn't explode overnight. It grew in inches. Painful, expensive inches. He landed a contract with a local restaurant chain, then lost it 6 months later when they went with a cheaper competitor. Took out a small business loan he couldn't afford. Worked 100-hour weeks. Slept in his car between deliveries. Alawan went back to school part-time while working full-time. Community college, business administration, classes at night after 8-hour shifts, fell asleep over textbooks, failed a class, retook it, her mother's health, improved slightly, then declined again. The bills never stopped coming. They built together, but not side by side. Not yet, just parallel. Two people climbing separate mountains, texting encouragement at midnight when the climb felt impossible. Bennett: lost another client today. Trying not to panic. Allawan: you're still standing. That's not failure, that's faith. Some nights Bennett would sit in his empty office, a converted garage he rented for $200 a month, and wonder if he'd misheard God. If the promise was supposed to stay a childhood memory instead of becoming adult responsibility. But then he'd remember her hands, how they shook at the food pantry, how she still gave when she had nothing, and he'd get up, make another call, send another proposal, keep building. Faith tested repeatedly looks less like confidence and more like showing up exhausted, less like certainty and more like stubborn refusal to quit. They walked through valleys that had no shortcuts, no miracles, just grinding daily obedience to something neither of them could see clearly yet. God didn't rush them, he refined them. Bennett's company finally caught traction in year 4. Not explosive growth, steady. A contract with a medical supply company, then 2 more. Revenue climbing, debt shrinking. He hired his first employee, then 3 more. Moved into an actual office with windows and working heat. The morning he signed the lease, he called Elowen. I think we're going to make it. Her laugh came through the phone, bright and disbelieving. You doubted. Every single day. Me too. Elowen finished her associate's degree, then transferred to a 4-year program. Social work. Because of course it was. She started working with an organization that helped families navigate housing insecurity, food assistance, medical debt, the same maze her family had stumbled through. She was good at it, patient, empathetic, saw people the way someone once saw a hungry boy on a playground. They'd meet for coffee once a week, cheap diner, refills on bad coffee. They'd talk about dreams, setbacks, the strange sensation of building something real from childhood rubble. Bennett never pushed, never demanded, just showed up, consistent, faithful, the way she once showed up with half a sandwich every single day. One evening, sitting in that diner booth with vinyl seats and fluorescent lights, Bennett reached across the table, took her hand. I don't have much yet. Not what I promised, but... Stop. Elowen squeezed his fingers. You've already kept the promise. You became someone who remembers, someone who shows up. That's what mattered. Then marry me anyway? She started crying immediately, nodded through tears. Yes, obviously yes. No ring, not yet, just hands held across a diner table, and God as witness. They married on a Saturday morning in the same church that housed the food pantry where they'd reunited. Sister Marie officiated. 20 people attended, Allawan's parents, Bennett's former foster sibling who'd kept in touch, a handful of friends who'd walked with them through the hardest years. No luxury, no elaborate ceremony, just vows spoken in a sanctuary that smelled like bread and grace. Allawan wore a simple white dress from a consignment shop. Bennett wore the one good suit he owned. They stood before God and community and promised what they'd already been doing: to show up, to stay, to give even when it cost everything. The reception was potluck in the church basement, casseroles and sheet cake and laughter that felt earned. This wasn't the wedding a 10-year-old boy imagined when he made wild promises about wealth. It was better, quieter, more real. Promise fulfilled, not as imagined, as intended. 5 years later, Bennett and Elowen stood at the edge of Lincoln Park Elementary Playground. Same dusty lot, same rusted swing set, same fence where a girl once watched a boy starve. But today, Volunteers set up tables, coolers filled with juice boxes, trays of sandwiches, fruit, chips, more food than 50 kids could eat. The Saturday lunch program sign flapped in the wind, funded by Bennett Cole Logistics and the Marcus Family Foundation. Every weekend, free meals, no questions, no qualifications, just kids being fed. Allowan stood beside Bennett, watching children line up with plates. A small black girl handed a sandwich to a boy who looked too thin. He tried to refuse. She insisted. Bennett's voice came out rough. "That was us. That's still us." Allowan leaned into him. "Just bigger now." They'd expanded the program to 4 schools, then 10, fed thousands of kids, hired social workers to connect families with resources, created a network of support that caught people before they fell through cracks. The logistics company grew. Allowan's organization grew, but they stayed small in the ways that mattered, drove used cars, lived in a modest house, gave away more than they kept. Because the promise was never about accumulating wealth. It was about becoming people who remembered, who showed up, who gave even when it cost everything. That evening, sitting on the same bench where Allowan once waited for a boy who disappeared, Bennett pulled out his wallet. The laminated note, now nearly 20 years old, still tucked inside. He read it aloud. "You don't have to be rich. You just have to remember." Allowan rested her head on his shoulder. "You remembered." "We both did." Silence. The playground empty now, sunset painting the sky orange and gold. Somewhere, God smiled. Not because the story was perfect, because it was faithful. The smallest act of kindness, a torn sandwich, a whispered promise, a note slipped into a backpack, had grown into something neither of them could have orchestrated alone. Bennett had become wealthy. Yes, but that wasn't the miracle. The miracle was that he'd become the kind of wealthy that fed children instead of forgetting them, the kind that built tables instead of walls. Allowan had become successful too, but not because she climbed over people, because she kept reaching down to pull others up. They'd become exactly who God saw when they were 8 and 10 years old, hungry and afraid, making promises they didn't understand. What if the smallest kindness you give today is the seed God uses to change someone's entire future? What if that sandwich you share, that dollar you give, that moment you choose to see someone when everyone else looks away? What if that's not insignificant? What if that's everything? Bennett and Allowan would tell you it is. That nothing done in love is ever wasted. That God doesn't forget the prayers children pray or the promises they make. That sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is tear your lunch in half and hand it to someone who's starving. Because you never know. That hungry kid might just grow up to feed thousands. And the girl who gave when she had nothing? She might just teach the world what wealth actually means. Not what you hold, but what you release. Not what you keep, but what you give away. The promise was never about money. It was about becoming people who remember that everyone deserves to be seen, fed, loved, believed in, even when they can't believe in themselves yet, especially then.